The streaming. So I'm ready whenever Janet gives you the go.
All right. You guys are good. Good to go.
All set, Janet. Thank you much. Good evening and welcome to the regular meeting of the Planning Board here in the beautiful city of Birmingham, Wednesday, April 14th, 2021. Could we please call the roll? And as a reminder, board members, please indicate your location currently when you tell us that you are present.
Thanks so much. Scott Klein.
Present in the city of Birmingham.
Robin Boyle.
Here, city of Birmingham.
Stuart Jeffries.
Present, city of Birmingham.
Bert Kosek.
He is just about to come in, so can you call him again at the end?
I can. Daniel
Thank you.
Shea.
Here, Birmingham, Michigan.
Brian Williams. Janelle Whipple-Boyce.
Here, Birmingham, Michigan.
Jason Emron.
Here, Birmingham, Michigan.
Nassim Ramin.
Here in Birmingham.
Daniel Murphy.
Here, Birmingham.
Jane Weinman. Okay, and Bert Kosek.
Here in Birmingham, Michigan.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
Excellent. We are quorum. Mr. Williams is not here today, so Nassim, you will be up as a voting member of the board for the evening. Review and approval of the minutes from March 24th. Any comments or corrections from the board? Mr. Schiff.
I have one on page 3 of the minutes where it lists the participants for the applicant RH Properties. Mike Kulka is listed as engineer. He's actually their environmental consultant or environmental engineer.
Excellent.
Got it.
Any other comments or corrections on the minutes? Knowing Mike Kulka the way I do, he'll be happy to get another mention here tonight.
Yes, I know him as well. And the more we mention him, the more nickels.
He's going to be happy, exactly. All right, seeing no other comments, do I have a motion to approve as amended?
Motion. Support.
Motion by Mr. Boyle, support by Mr. Scher. Any conversation at the board level? Hearing none, could we please call the roll?
Robin Boyle.
Yes.
Daniel Scher.
Yes.
Janelle Whipple-Boyce.
Yes.
Nassim Ramin.
Yes.
Scott Klein.
Yes.
Stuart Jeffries.
I was not at the meeting.
Okay, Bert Kosek.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, motion passes. Thank you very much. Chairperson's comments. Welcome again, everyone, and to the board as well. Tonight we have a hybrid meeting, which means that we're going to first discuss a site plan review, and then we're going to peel the onion back and get into the heart of the matter, some land planning matters, ordinance matters, a couple of study session items from our action list that we discussed a meeting or two ago. There will be an opportunity for those of you from the public that have joined us to provide input. At some point, we will go through our process. We will hear from an applicant. We'll hear from staff. We'll have some conversations at a board level. I will go to the public and offer an opportunity for public input. At that point, if you are interested in providing input, please use the raise your hand function. The bottom center of your console, I have a list of participants. I will try and grab them in the order I see the hands go up. When I call your name, please restate your name, where you are commenting from, and provide your comments. Please do your best to be brief so we can keep it moving along and we can ensure that everybody has a choice or an opportunity, I should say, to participate. With that, Gianna, are there any changes to the agenda that we should be aware of?
There are not.
Wonderful. So let us dive right in. Item E, special land use permit and final site plan and design review, 720 North Old Woodward, the Vinewood Bistro. Nick?
Hey, thank you, sir. So 720 North Old Woodward, as usual, as these types of reviews go that were heard on a previous date, I'll be giving a review of the whole project, maybe a little light review, trying to focus on the newer stuff, the updates that are here today. Chairman Klein, if you would like me to stop and go over anything in further detail, please feel free to stop me, or at the end, I'm happy to explain further. So the basics, 720 North Old Woodward, currently a 2-story commercial building at the north end of downtown Birmingham. The applicant has submitted a special land use permit application for a new bistro in the lower level. That application came to the planning board on February 24th. in which the planning board determined that a postponement was necessary to address several things, including some questions about the winter garden, planning division and departmental comments from the city, deliveries, trucks, a clearer floor plan, or some clarity in regards to that, the dumpster configuration as well. The applicant has submitted revised plans addressing most of that, or at least submitting information for most of it. That was placed in your packet today. So the first section here, Bistro Requirements, not much has changed. We left the question in there about the winter garden being enclosed, not enclosed. Hopefully you all can continue that discussion tonight. I know we talked a lot about it last time, but it's still kind of an important issue in regards to the Bistro Requirements. The other issue that was raised last time was the hours of operation that were not yet submitted. So the planning division did receive those. They plan to separate them into summer hours and winter hours. Summer, basically 11 to 12, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday through Saturday, 11 to 1, and Sunday, 10 to 11. The winter hours are a bit different. Open later Monday, Tuesday, 3 to 12, Wednesday, 11 to 12, Thursday to Friday, 11 a.m. to 1 a.m., Saturday, 3 to 1 a.m., and Sunday, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. I also received some information about the outdoor dining proposed hours, which they had said will be until midnight every night. I had for both seasons. I put in here that I had some questions about Sunday nights, just because the restaurant closes at 11. I had asked the applicant and received an answer late. That's why this report wasn't updated, but they do intend to close the outdoor dining at 11 on Sundays when the restaurant closes. So there's a little clarity there. Also, I believe it was Mr. Williams that brought up an interest to hear about the two nearest bistros and what their hours look like. Specifically Market North End and Lux. Market North End has hours from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. every day, and Lux Bar and Grill 11 to 11 every day. Now I want to be clear that these are the hours that were listed on the SLUP when they went through their SLUP. I know it's COVID and those could vary. Even on Google, I know Google updates that for COVID hours. So these were the hours that they were approved for in their SLUP. And I believe I provided a table for you guys in your packet with more restaurant hours that were in their SLUPs, just for conversation purposes. Next section, setback and height. Again, not many changes. They're still going to need to get approval from this board for the projection into the right-of-way of the proposed dining platform. And also a lease with the city commission for the use of that public property. So those are two big ticket items that they're still outstanding, but they did revise the canopy projections that we had some objections with in regards to projections. So they brought the front canopy to 4 feet, which is 2/3 of the sidewalk, and the lesser of 5 feet versus 2/3. And the rear has also been reduced to 5 feet. There's no sidewalk back there, so they just kind of default to the 5-foot max projection. So they meet the requirements in that regard as well. So there's no, well, the planning board still needs to approve those projections, but they are now within the confines of the ordinance. Nothing has changed in substance with the dumpster. They did submit a revised plan. Let me see if I can pull that up. That might be better here. Yeah. With a little bit different shape to the dumpster. It's more like an open U versus a plain old straight U. Let's see if I can make this clearer. But still, we had a long talk about this last time. They're still only proposing 2 dumpsters, and they have added a grease trap. I think based on our comments from last time, but it's not clear if one of those dumpsters is recycling only. It appears to us that these are only just the regular 2 dumpsters that are there now. So they have addressed the screening, but they haven't necessarily addressed the quantity and the overflow questions that we had. They did note, I believe it was in their response letter, that they They tried to save some space on the sides to like for the stacking of cardboard, hopefully broken down cardboard. Whether or not that's something that we like is a whole another thing. We don't think that's necessarily appropriate. We'd rather see in a recycling dumpster, but worth a discussion. Mechanical equipment was another one where there was a little bit of outstanding information. They have submitted that information. That screen wall is proposed to be 8 feet high in the same placement that it was the first time. And I've got spec sheets for the mechanical units that show that that screen wall will sufficiently screen the new units. The landscaping did change a little bit as well. It's all potted, for the most part, all potted landscaping anyways. They're gonna, instead of that lawn concept that they had in the original concrete-based patio, they're gonna do what they call like seasonal natural river boxes with river type plantings, some grasses, seasonal flowering types, nothing that stands out as a prohibited species at all. So that works for us. And the ivy on the front and the rear is still proposed to remain. All the parking stuff is all the same. Again, they're in the parking assessment district, so there is no parking required. Same with loading, no spaces are required. It's too small of a space. Access is going to all stay the same. What is new and important to talk about is the lighting. Now, they had submitted a lot of these details last time in terms of what luminaries they're going to use, what their output is. But the big ticket item that we were missing was the photometric to see how it all came together in terms of light intensity. So they did submit that plan, and the rule is that they're not allowed to exceed 1.5 maintained foot candles for this particular building because it's a 0-foot setback. It's allowed to be measured 5 feet beyond the property line. So we see numbers as high as, 10.0 in the front, 10.0 maintained foot candles, 11.6 in the back by the canopy. I saw a 30, on the deck patio. I presume it's because of the lights that are proposed underneath the umbrellas, but those are some seriously high numbers that we don't really see very often. So again, obvious, we need that revised. We cannot approve that as is, or they need to seek a variance from the Board of Zoning Appeals. Again, departmental reports, I sent these around again, not many new comments. The engineering division, which I failed to include in here, noted that a permit from Eagle will be required. So that would also, that would be vetted during the building plan process too. They'll make sure that that permit is pulled, but in general, all the departmental comments stay the same. The biggest change in the design review section, which is the next section here, is that instead of a permanent concrete-based patio, they're now proposing a permanent wood plank-based patio. The applicant has indicated that that is because of the work in the floodplain. They feel as though it's a better solution to their issues. So it's basic wood plank cladding. Let me pull that up too. I'll stop the share, pull up another share. I received these revised 3D renderings today. They had failed to send them to me initially, but this is the concept. It's the same shape, same disposition, just all wood planks instead. Color is natural wood, a little on the darker side. Lastly, I don't think they have signage on here, but in terms of signage, they also resolved that issue. The front sign, well, excuse me, one of the issues with the signs. So that first sign on the front of the building had to conform to the canopy sign ordinance that was recently updated. They've now revised those plans to meet that ordinance, but they still have the sign proposed on this area here of the deck, just to say the Vinewood. That's on public property. Even if they get a lease, it's still public property. You're not permitted to have signs on public property. So they have indicated that they plan to actually seek a variance for that. They think it's worthwhile. So more power to them. They have also completed their required attachments. You saw an existing conditions plan within there. Again, the photometric plan was outstanding. And I had just needed a couple more material spec sheets. All of those have been submitted. So Thank you to the applicant for that. So yeah, in general, they have gotten a lot closer in terms of meeting the ordinance and the design review standards. There are a couple still, big ticket items out there in terms of the photometric, the dumpster, the land lease, all things that I'm sure we'll talk about this evening. Our recommendation was for this board to recommend approval to the planning, the city commission for both the SLUP and the FSP. But we recognize that it's tight. I know there's a lot of outstanding issues, so I'm hoping that I'm able to stop it right there, Chairman Klein, and obviously I'm open for questions. I'm open to pull up any of the sheets that you guys would like me to, and I'll walk you through it. And yeah, back to you.
Thank you, Nick. We'll go to the board questions. Ms. Boyce.
Nick, will you pull up the plan view of that dumpster proposal again? And in the meantime, I'm wondering, who would review that? Would it be building or would it be engineering? And has it been determined that a vehicle can make that turn, particularly when the two spots closest to it have cars in them? Has someone looked at that to make sure that that can work?
Yeah, the engineering department did review it, and I didn't get any comments on that. But and I have hard copy plans that I could make actual measurements for. So this would be the actual distance, which seems to be, if a typical parking space is 9 foot wide, I'm just going to guess that that's maybe 15 foot. So although I don't know the answer if that's appropriate, maybe the applicant can give us some dimensions. But
Yeah,
it is here, 1410.
If I may, that parking lot, you can go either way as far as driving through.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry for interrupting, Jana, too, if you wanted to say something.
No, I was just going to say the engineering department would look at it when they reviewed the plans. And so if they had thought it was a dead end issue where people couldn't get through, they would have noted it. So I think it's fine. I think to your point, there's two-way traffic or could be. So obviously only one car could get through at a time, but that's at the very end of the parking lot. So.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Jeffries.
Yeah, hey, Nick, I noticed on the floor plan, sheet number A1, could you go to that?
Of course. I think I'm on it, right? Yep.
Yeah,
That's it.
and go over to the far left. So that winter garden thing, I noticed the ceiling is painted gypsum board, which is known as drywall in what I know. Is that a material we would typically use outside?
I suppose I mean, I'm inclined to say no, just because it's drywall and everybody knows what drywall is, but I suppose that's a good question for the applicant. Because it is the ceiling, and I doubt it would be subject to too much rain and snow contact directly.
But there's nothing in our ordinance.
Moisture. No, not that I'm aware of.
All right.
Other questions for Nick? Mr. Kozik.
Nick, I'm looking at the Bistro Requirements and just a couple of things here. So item E says bistros must have tables located in the storefront space, lining any street or pedestrian passage. So your interpretation is that this is a pedestrian passage. I don't know what that definition is, but it looks like it serves 3 buildings to the north and sort of dead ends. But I suppose it's a pedestrian passage.
Yes, so in general, so I'll admit maybe I deferred somewhat to what the city commission had said, but there is a sidewalk there. It's not, like you said, it's really only access to those 3 buildings, and I don't necessarily think those are public entrances either. So could you
So you
consider
referenced
the
the
parking
city
lot?
commission. What did you mean by what the city
Sure.
commission said?
just simply stating that they thought it was a really cool idea that it's placed in the rear by the river. That's really
Okay.
it.
So not specifically in regards to the pedestrian.
No,
passage
no,
or-
thank you for clarifying. Yeah, no, they did not say
Okay.
that they felt that that was a pedestrian passage or a storefront.
Okay, so my next question is, it says a minimum of 70% glazing must be provided along building facades facing a street or pedestrian passage. So if we interpret this as being a pedestrian passage, so the facade is that back vertical plane of the building. Do we know that calculation from 1 foot to 8 foot? The percentage, does it meet the 70% rule is my question. As I didn't see it anywhere. It looks substantially less than that to me. Have you done
and
that?
I haven't asked for it. You know, Jana and I spoke about this and we felt as though because it's not a storefront, that we weren't necessarily sure that we would seek too much the 70% glazing, if that
Well,
makes sense.
again, I'm just going back to the ordinance. I didn't write it,
Sure.
but it says item F, a minimum of 70% glazing, minimum, must be provided along a building facade facing a, in this case, a pedestrian passageway. So, and it goes back to what I said at the last meeting. I think the intent here is, why does our ordinance say that you should be able to see tables in the, through the storefront? It's because that dialogue between public space and indoor space. So this, in my mind, is not the facade. This is an interior wall that's behind the facade of the building. So I can ask the applicant to respond to that, but it goes back to where I was the last time this was in front of us, that I don't think this meets the spirit and intent of what the zoning ordinance is asking for or requiring in regards to a bistro. It's about that dialogue between public space and what happens inside. That's why it's 70%. So maybe it's 70%, but I didn't see the number anywhere. I did a little graphic. I didn't do the math, but it looked significantly less than that. And then furthermore, I think they're proposing some type of a screen mesh in those openings as well. So anyways, and again, my concern goes back to what is a winter garden. Our ordinance is pretty clear about, weather permitting between May and October. My concern goes back to where I was last month. Is this outdoor space or is this indoor space? And it sure feels a lot like indoor space to me. So again, that's my view. We can have the applicant tell us what that percentage is, but in my mind, that's the facade of the building, and that needs to comply with the 70% or get past this board and then the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Any other questions for Nick? I have one, Nick, real quickly. To your knowledge, is there any reason why outdoor dining for this project could not be provided out front? Is there any ordinance, any legislative rule, any policy that would say that we're not allowed to have a dining deck out in the parking area in front of the building?
So in terms of policy and rules and ordinance, I would say no. As I explained last time, I would call it more politically or, public opinion based, that it would just be tight and, losing those spots, etc. So definitely not rule based.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other questions before we bring the applicant up to help, kind of fill in any blanks? Seeing none, is the applicant present and would they like to come forth and maybe, there, Mr. Bonaslawski, welcome. We can make sure he's unmuted. I don't know if anyone else is present from the team, but perhaps welcome, Roman, if you could maybe just provide any other input or if there's any response you'd like to give to anything you've heard to date, that would be appreciated.
Sure. Thank you, Scott, and good evening, everybody. I'd like to address a couple of issues. And I'd like to start with the photometrics because we've spent a lot of time with our own light meter walking around the city, and we have the opportunity to eliminate the lighting or even diminish it more. But I would like to speak with regards to what Nick had mentioned, because when someone hears something like 30-foot candles off the property line, Nick, is it possible that you could pull up the photometric plan so we could show the board what that light distribution is like? First of all, Nick is specifically responding to the language of the code and that of the zoning ordinance, and that is that it relates to light being cast beyond the property line of the building. And Nick, if you would just enlarge the entire back patio area, I'd like to show how we believe that with the special conditions associated with the leasing of this space from the city, that we're meeting the spirit of the ordinance with regards to terminating the light at the termination of this parcel that ends up being incorporated into our project. In order to have a functioning patio of any type, you have to have sufficient light for safety, to be able to read a menu, for instance. And if you're to look at the back of the building, and then work your way to the east, to the right on the photometric plan, you see that those photometrics that reach the numbers of 30 that you could see right in the center of the photometric plan at about where that division is. Thank you, Nick. You'll see that from that point, as we move to the east, we actually meet a 0 condition at the edge of our ramp. So again, with regards to the lighting of that back space, I'd like to discuss another aspect with regards to the lighting. Having spent this time at the rear and even reviewing photographs that were submitted by residents that submitted letters of opposition to the project, if you look at those photographs, you will see that there is a glaring problem with the existing lighting condition on the back of that building. What we are proposing with our project is, in fact, a subtle and insignificant part of the extension of the general lighting of that back area. Nick, you can also show the board, there were photographs included with the second letter of opposition, I believe, that showed the building in the evening at the, with all of the city lights on. The city has used in this specific area of the parking lot open face fixtures, and even the pedestrian fixtures are all open lantern variety. And when you see that, the photographs, you will see that there's a significant problem with the lighting at the back of this project. The type of lighting that we're proposing that spills from underneath the balcony that exists on the back of that building, and as it works its way out just to the limitations of where we're proposing the primary seating of that back, there's the perfect example to show the board inappropriate lighting and how I can understand someone currently dealing with this condition, looking at a rather uncontrolled lighting situation and considering how much worse it could become. In effect, if this lighting was to remain exactly as it is, our lighting will barely impact the negative aspects of what the neighboring properties and even anyone using that parking lot would experience on a regular basis. I think it would be obvious to everybody. So I just wanted to put a reference frame around those numbers that were mentioned by Nick in his review, that we believe and this was part of our plan from the beginning, that we are less populating the easternmost end of that patio, where previously we were showing pools that had the potential of even small lighting that would occur within a little wading pool, not even a wading pool, just a little fountain, that in fact would be seen from above and would only contribute to the negative aspects of light.
I believe we've lost Roman.
Oh, I think we lost Roman.
I do know I see Ron Ray on, Brian Nager, Mr. Beckos. Those are all part of the applicant team.
Right. Well,
Nicole's iPhone even potentially.
this is the one negative, if you will, to the virtual world we are living in right now. The technology is, Roman doesn't do this when he's live, I'll tell you that right now. Looks like he's trying to come back. Oh, there you
There
are.
it is. Cool.
Mr. Ray as well, just on backup. Make sure they're unmuted.
I have asked them both to unmute, but they're still muted.
Ray?
Roman.
There we go. There's Ron.
Hello, Ron.
Yep. Hey guys, how are you? Hey Roman, can you hear?
We can hear Ron. We cannot
Let me
hear
call
Roman.
him right real quick. Sorry for this.
Yeah, we all need to be understanding in this time. We'll give you a moment.
Roman, if you can hear us, some people have also actually called in while their video is live as well. If you have the number handy, if you're having mic issues, you could maybe just, oh, here it is.
There we go.
My apologies. I swore my laptop was plugged in. It was in a area and my computer died. So that was the first thing I wanted to mention with regards to the lighting. Secondarily, there was a question that Nick brought up with regards to our screen wall, which isn't necessarily acting so much to screen the properties to our north, because those are very relatively unused areas, and we believe that the letting through of a little bit of light into that area is an appropriate means of transitioning over through that entire space. But with regards to that wall and the fact that we'd like to graze the front of it with light, we can add a shield component at the top of the wall that would be able to trap and prevent. It would actually provide the cutoff component that Nick mentions that would not be available on the light fixture itself. So those were the two things I just wanted to mention with regards to the lighting. Oh, the third being at the front of the building. Again, if you were to see the photometric that occurs near the entry, part of the problems of using a photometric engineering application is that you have to match your light fixture to the light fixture that they have on file, that all of the photometrics are, the basic metrics are involved in it. And as it processes that, you don't have the opportunity to provide for dimming and other control components. And I understand that dimming leaves too much in the hands of the owner. We can reduce those lights even more. It's been very difficult. We're inventing something. This is a lightly illuminated base, and the fact that we have to take our readings at 6 feet above, that's where the concentration of light ends up occurring. It diffuses quickly as it hits the ground. But we did also notice in our own light readings as we went all the way down to the pearl, and it occurs that at every entry component, the light levels at 5 feet away from the building are considerably higher than 1.5. And I'm not using that as a precursor, as a substitute for what the zoning ordinance requires. And like I said, we can diminish the light source even more at those pieces to try to get it to work at the 1.5. It may become just a completely visual luminous component that doesn't even provide for light, almost as a backlit piece. That's everything to do with the lighting. Mr. Kosak brings up a good point with regards to literal definition with the word facade being used. It's funny because I'll admit to not having read it clearly enough. We constantly believe that our interior wall, which is our actual weather wall, in all glass, we were trying to just provide as much visibility as possible. But with regards to that, there's two aspects to that specific definition that we'd have to address. The first, as Bert had mentioned, is the percentage. That's a structural modification to the rear of the building, so we can meet the 70% opening requirement. The second one is one that, as with all ordinances, the goal of being able to address all possible situations while still meeting the spirit of the ordinance, the word glazing introduces a completely different concept, because we truly wish to use this as an open to weather space, and the use of exterior drywall is common. In fact, it's happening on the underside of the rework of for employee meal of the building next to Market. That's an exterior drywall product. The reason we went for exterior drywall there instead of using what might be a more traditional porch liner or other porch considered components is that we want the bang of color out of it. We believe that the impact is from a design standpoint is one of introducing a very interesting color. And for us, it's the easiest to provide that smooth surface to paint on. Finally, I'll mention that with regards to the dumpsters and with regards to working in the floodplain, we researched greatly of the permitting process required for building in this specific AG zone of the floodplain, of the floodway and floodplain, the requirements. We read through what those permitting requirements are. It caused a complete rethink of what we want to do back there. We're proposing the opportunity for floodwaters to be able to move through the structure, meeting the requirements. We think that we could, working with the state of Michigan, that we could provide the appropriate information to them to show that we're complying with the permitting process. We understand that there's secondary, after reading through this information, it's quite interesting that there are other implications because the adjacency to the existing building may require different insurance requirements for the two, but those are all logistics that we believe we can work through as we hope to be able to work through the leasing of the property from the city in order to make this happen. The big deal that I wanted to stress here again is that we understand that the lighting's not supposed to go beyond that point, and we understand that this is a lease of public property, but as such, the proposed function of it requires minimum life safety associated with it, lighting that's appropriate for the use, lighting that we're confident with the use of our downlights from the underside of the existing balcony that's right there, the other minimal lighting that occurs in the space, the gas flames that are there will be insignificant in relationship to the other lighting that's currently provided by the city in the parking area. And back to the issue of dislocating a patio on North Old Woodward, I'm sure if it came down to the fact that that's some requirement that is a make or break for the project, the owners can chime in on that. They're both present at this meeting. That could be discussed. But again, it's about what we believe is the spirit of the ordinance, that the outdoor activity produces a synergy with the indoor activity, specifically for the promotion of what a bistro is and for the providing for the most success of the bistro. And my final note with reference to Mr. Kosak's statement, we do believe that that's a pedestrian path. If it was a pedestrian path to one building, it would still qualify as a pedestrian path. And again, if we're now looking at everything from a very literal standpoint, I believe that would be the appropriate interpretation.
Thank you, Roman. Any questions for the applicant or the architect at this point? Seeing none, thank you very much, gentlemen. I appreciate it. Stay close. At this point, we will open up comment to the public. If there is anyone in the public that wishes to comment on this proposal, please use the raise your hand function. Before I do that, I will say that we received a number of emails from Nick. I don't know that I have them in front of me, but I do want the public to know that we have been receiving all emails that have been sent into the staff over the course of the last few days. So I just want to make it clear that those are coming through the board members. But with that, I will throw it open to the public. Use the raise your hand function. I see Miss Tate, Miss Kristen Tate has done so. So please, we can unmute her and please introduce yourself one more time and provide your feedback, please.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Kristen Tate. My address is 692 Brookside Avenue. And I am the one who provided the photos of both the lighting and the floodwaters. And I appreciate that the applicants are trying to address the lighting issues. I will note that the back row of streetlights in the parking lot were not actually lit at either the time of the last meeting or in the pictures that I took, and they have been actually off the whole time since then. So it has lessened the light spilling over onto our street significantly. I want to apologize that in my letter I said the Merrillwood office building. I did mean the Maplewood, and my apologies for misnaming it. The applicant responded about deliveries, but the bulk of the response was about FedEx and UPS, which I don't believe plays a big part in running a restaurant as much as food and beverage deliveries. And it is the noise and the timing of those deliveries that is of concern to me and the other people on my street. I would register a complaint that the hours are still way too late because you have lots of activity after when you close at 1 a.m. of cleaning up and a lot of noise. And, you know, the noise is actually a bigger concern than the lighting for me. I would like to note that the city added an extra row of parking spots to that lot specifically to address parking concerns in that area, which were already a problem without an extra restaurant with 100 and, by my count, 22 seats. Even if just those seats were only occupied once throughout the day, the amount of traffic increase, I would think is a concern that should be raised either here or in the commission meeting. And finally, before I leave, I didn't want to reiterate anything that I had written about or said last time, but I would like to repeat that I disagree with pushing the downtown into this area. You're leaving a rather decaying core at this point. There are 4 empty storefronts on Woodward, one of which is, I believe, owned by the applicant. In a row, it's rather depressing to walk to work and walk past those and see the for lease signs. And I would suggest kindly that the applicant consider that building, and it is more in the spirit of the Bistro ordinance as well, rather than trying to push something that needs so many variances into a spot that is basically a restaurant at the end of a parking lot looking out over a dumpster. Thank you very much and have a good evening.
Thank you very much, Ms. Tate. Is there anyone else from the public who cares to comment? If so, please use the raise your hand function. I see Mr. John Rosselli, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Let's make sure we can unmute Mr. Rosselli. There we are, sir. Let's make sure he's unmuted first.
Am I good to go?
Yes, sir.
Well, I first and foremost want to say good evening to everyone. It's been a long time since I've chatted with the board. I'm John Rosselli. I'm the building owner that's directly adjacent to where this proposed bistro is going to be located. And I just want to share some of the concerns that I have, if I may.
Please.
One of the concerns that I have is the 2 dumpsters that are there presently at the current time cannot even handle the amount of waste that is being used by all the tenants in all those buildings. I have personally cleaned around those dumpsters over the last 15 years, hundreds of times, picking up waste, empty bags. People come at night and drop things in them. There's animals, there's rodents, there's all kinds of stuff that is already in those dumpsters, let alone now that we're going to be supplying restaurant waste and spoils in that area. So I'm quite concerned about that. It was brought up a little bit earlier by Jana about the turning radius over there. There two vehicles cannot pass between those two park spots and the dumpsters the way it is. Anytime there's a delivery from UPS or FedEx, it usually leads to a traffic jam in there. In some of the notes that the city structured, they said that there's no residential properties adjacent to this. I have a tenant that is in the condo on the top of our building, and I'm very certain, I haven't spoken with Martin directly, that he's probably not going to want to listen to the noise till 1 o'clock in the morning, 6 or 7, I'm not certain, 3 or 4 days a week. So I'm very, very concerned about that. I already have a vacancy in my building. It was the old Luigi Bruni hair salon. And I don't want an issue with another one of my tenants leaving the building, because it would not be healthy for me or the property itself, leaving more vacancies on the street. And when Luigi was up and operating, you could barely find a parking spot in that lot. So if I have the opportunity, and hopefully I will, I have some people looking at the space now to lease it out, I don't want to have issues with the parking lot. It was very, very difficult to find parking earlier when we were running the hair salon out of there. I have concerns with the smells and the garbage that I mentioned. And then also at the lower level of the building, I have 2 parking spots that were required by Jana and the team years ago to be used for the residential unit above. So I'm going to have people exiting out of those 2 garage doors on my lower level. And I'm going to have to be concerned about pedestrians coming from the restaurant and maybe, somebody running into somebody. You can only see one of the doors in the opening. There's another one that's south of that. And where that triangular piece of concrete is right there, and the gentleman is walking in the rendering, I have the downspout for the building that runs on top of that. And I replace it probably 2 times a year without exaggeration, because everyone that comes out of that door from the building next door, they want to step on that downspout and that triangular piece of concrete and smash it. So those are concerns. I think the project looks very nice. I've worked with Ram and Roman in the past. But I just have concerns because I don't want to limit my leasability with the building. I don't want to alienate my tenant that's up in the top with the noise, because he's only probably a floor and a half above this, the way the topography sits right now. And then, is there going to be any music that's going to be playing on this deck? I didn't read it in any of the information or not for additional noise concerns.
Thank you, sir. We'll make sure that is answered for you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rozelle. Drew Detling. If Drew Detling is available, please.
How do I unmute myself?
Yes.
Start your meeting. Start my meeting.
You did. We enabled it for you, and
There
then
you go,
now
sir.
you're
Hey, there we are.
Welcome.
How are you?
Good. How are you, sir?
Good. I don't want to be redundant, but I would agree with virtually every one of the points that Kristen made. I echo John's concerns about the noise. I've heard no discussion about the number of seats and where does a bistro license end and a Class C license start. And I think the hours of operation, little to no concession was made there. I mean, basically, we're going to be woken up at between 6 and 7 in the morning when they start picking up the dumpsters, and we will have noise until probably, I don't know, 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. So I just think it's placing an undue hardship on the neighborhood.
Thank you, Mr. Detling. For the record, do you live in?
Oh, sorry, 740 Brookside.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your input.
My bad.
Thank you.
About the treehouse.
Let's move on to Kristen Bongiovanni. Are you present? Yes. Hello. Let's make sure she's unmuted.
Hi,
Good
everyone.
evening.
How are you tonight?
Good. How are you?
Good. I'm a property owner on 680 Brookside, directly across the river. I also echo Kristen Tate's letter and everything that she had said tonight. I think the biggest concern is noise. activity across the river. I think one of the reason, if you notice all the houses on Brookside that face the river, every single one of them has a deck that overlooks the river. It's our one area of solace. It's a great, beautiful, natural area. We have Woodward on our other side, and this is our kind of our peaceful side. So I guess obviously we're very concerned about the noise there. I don't know why we're trying to activate a parking lot. I keep hearing tonight that it's the spirit of the bistro, and we're trying to keep into the spirit of the bistro ordinance. I don't see how this fits the spirit of the bistro. And as a property owner, those are my biggest concerns. And thank you for listening. And I do hope you listen to all of the other, or read all of the emails and responses that you had received from others tonight too.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, ma'am. One last time, is there anyone else in the public that cares to comment on this proposal? Going around, not see any other hands going up. Looks pretty clear to me. So we will bring it back to the board. Mr. Jeffrey.
Yeah, before I get into any comments on the specifics of this, I got a question for Jana, and that's, I know there's several others bistro applications that the city commission sent us, and we can only pick 2. And I think in the past, we've had some that really fit, and we may have taken the first 2. And I think there's a lot of great aspects on this one, and there's some things that we're struggling with a little bit, I guess. And I'm just wondering from Jana, are these things imminent? I mean, does it make sense for us to take in all this information, and then if we've got one coming in 2 weeks or 4 weeks, to maybe look at the collective of those and pick the ones that, maybe there's one that's coming in 2 weeks that would activate and maybe check a few more boxes. And I think we owe it to, the spirit of the evaluation process that was set up about picking 2 that maybe we hold off. If there's nobody else coming, then maybe that's a different question.
There actually are. There are 2 that are already in for the May 26th meeting of the planning board, and that is Bloom, Birmingham, and Sushi Japan. Those are 2. Whistle Stop, I understand, is coming, but they're not in yet, so they're not in line, and they're an existing establishment in any event.
Jana, this raises a question, however, Mr. Jeffries, and I'm glad you asked it, because in my mind, our job here is not to take what has been given to us from the city commission and choose only the 2 that we think are fit. Our job as the land planning arm to review the site plan submitted and provide a recommendation to the board or to the commission on whether or not the plans meet the ordinance and meet good land planning, good design, and have our recommendation for an approval. They're the ones that have to make the decision. So I guess unless I am way off base here, we're not vetting these from the standpoint of which 2 do we want? What are the 2 best? At least I'm not. That's not the approach that I think we're being asked to take. Jana, would you agree with that?
Well, I definitely see where the confusion comes in, because in past years, the planning board has been asked to send them back to the commission in priority ranking. That was not the direction this year.
Right.
So definitely I can see why there's confusion.
Understood. Anyone else care to have any comments on that or anything else related? Mr. Boyle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had the opportunity this afternoon to go and revisit the site. And one thing that struck me, and it struck me the first time I visited it, was the adjacency to the Rouge River. And I wondered if we would have an opportunity this evening to somewhat widen the conversation. This is also driven by the instances that we've had over recent years regarding other developments close by to the Rouge River and the floodplain that it has. I don't want to go too far off beam, but we're all reading about the impact of climate change and the increase in severe weather events and the increasing levels of precipitation and other characteristics of these storms. It would suggest to me that whatever happens here, there's going to be very careful attention paid to this particular development, which is, on my count, about 9 feet from the recorded edge of the river. In terms of vertical height, we're only talking maybe 4 feet from where the water is or was today to where it would be lapping against this new proposed deck. Now, I hear tonight that there's been a modification, but I'm still not in any way satisfied that this issue has been given the attention that it absolutely deserves. So I know this is taking us in a different direction from the lighting and the other issues that we're asked to look at, but this is a land planning issue, and there is nothing more important than these issues regarding the impact of this development on the Rouge River and vice versa, the impact of the Rouge River on this particular property.
Thank you, Mr. Boyle. Any further comment from anyone else? Mr. Scher?
Oh, I think, I think Robin makes a good point, although unless we want to, or the ordinance requires that there not be any development within the floodplain, which I didn't understand that it did. I think that we're kind of constrained by in terms of ordinance analysis, by the contingency that the applicant get a permit, because from Eagle, if Eagle finds that it's not in the public interest or doesn't meet the state requirements, they would deny the permit, the applicant wouldn't be able to build it. Otherwise, I think it becomes the applicant's risk. I don't know if they can get flood insurance or not, and what it would, what it would expend. I know I remember several years ago when that part of the Rouge River flooded very significantly, before we were all attuned to climate change, causing significant issues for buildings in that area. I don't know exactly what the impact would be if this property were developed as proposed, but I can safely say it would be good. I guess for me, it's another reason. I think fundamentally, my analysis of this is that twofold. First, that the winter garden really isn't outdoor space. Mr. Kosak's points about the facade and the glazing, I think, are all valid. But fundamentally, I applaud the applicant. It's a creative solution to a use in the rear of the building, but it is more outside space. Not the winter garden's really doubling the outside space. I think the back, I think the intent and spirit of the ordinance is to activate pedestrian ways, and whether the pedestrian way extends 5 feet or 30 feet past the property, it's really not a public pedestrian way. There's really no public access, nor would the construction and operation of this facility activate the pedestrian way if there is one farther up the street. That it's just not, the topography and the way the buildings are built, as I've looked at it, don't work that way. So I'm of a mind that this proposal should be recommended for not approval because it doesn't apply with the intent and spirit of the ordinance. The issues of noise and the trash and the pedestrian conflict with the parking next door are all additional reasons, but to me, the fact that this doesn't comply with the intent is sufficient for me to recommend or to advocate recommending that we not send an approval on the City Commission.
Anyone else care to comment? Ms. Boyce?
Well, I'll just chime in too that that item E of the Bistro ordinance, of course, is the part that talks about a passageway or a storefront space lining the street. And when I initially read through this, I just sort of went through that, assumed I knew what all those words meant, because I do, and then looked back in our definitions, and to my surprise, there was a definition for a passageway. And in that definition on page 224 of the zoning ordinance, it says that alleys are part of a community circulation system. And this clearly is not. And in fact, I really do like the design. I think it's very creative, but I'm agreeing that there probably aren't some things that are well enough satisfied with the Bistro ordinance, including another point within there talking about enclosures facilitating year-round dining outdoors are not permitted. And I don't think any of us doubt that the winter garden will be used year-round. So is that an enclosure? I think so. Not like the ones we've seen before with isinglass, and they specifically say that they're not proposing ever to use isinglass, but it certainly is a form of an enclosure, and it's in addition to the permitted 65 interior seats. They have 64, I think. But so there are a couple of things here that just I can't be okay with, like Dan described and like Bert described. I'm just hung up on those two items in particular.
Okay. Anyone else? I guess I'll toss in my last 2 cents. No, will not disagree necessarily with anything my fellow board members said. I do love this project in a vacuum, and think the idea of dining, looking over the river would be unique to this community, and it is be wonderfully executed by these plans. It's a matter of the location and a matter of the simple fact that the city would be providing a bistro license as well as agreeing to the use of public property. To me is a different, perhaps, standard, if you will. I have concerns about the outdoor space here. I've come around a little bit on the winter garden. Yes, technically it's probably not an outdoor space, but you know what? In the grand scheme of things, I could probably be allowed to look past that if everything else was in order. But there's so many issues with regard to how this interacts with nature, how close it is to nature. We've heard about it in a positive way, but there's also the negative ramifications, the dumpsters. And while I know the applicant is indicated that they will take care of all of the Eagle permitting, and that is a permit issue, not a site plan issue, I admit to that. I guess just for the record, as somebody who is not providing their professional opinion tonight, because I'm not getting paid for it, but who has done permitting within floodplains, the cost and likelihood of getting a permit on this, cost is high and the likelihood is low. I'm putting that very nicely. I mean, this is $30,000 to $50,000 with study and permitting in order to determine whether or not you're able to do it without impacting neighboring property. Again, that's a permitting issue, not a site plan issue, but there's too many things for me to suggest that this is just not the right site. As much as I love the concept and I love the idea and wish that this could be picked up and moved to another location. Any other comments from the board? Is there anyone that would care to move us in a direction here tonight? Now you get quiet.
I mean, if there's nobody, I was quiet to see if anybody else wanted to speak and, even head in a different direction. But, if there's no other comment, I think we have 2 separate recommendations to address, if I recall. One's the special land use permit and one's the site plan.
Yes, technically. I mean, I suppose that the site plan and the special land use are so entwined in this one, but if you'd like to do 2, that's fine. I think I would accept the language in the the recommended language, if you're open to it, it's up to you.
Well, I mean, my motion, so I'll move that planning board recommend denial to the city commission of the special land use permit for 720 North Old Woodward Vinewood Bistro, because among other things, the proposal fails to satisfy the spirit and intent of the zoning ordinance as required in section 7.26 and 7.27, specifically the outdoor enclosure issue of 3.04 C10 H and the no permanent structure, paraphrasing, requirement of section 3.04 C10 I, as well as floodplain, dumpster and pedestrian interaction, and what I'll call them storefront issues.
Motion by Mr. Scher. Do we have a second? Second by Mr. Kozik. Any conversation at the board level? Seeing none, I'll take it to the public once. Is there anyone from, oh, Mr. Kozik, I apologize.
Am I unmuted?
No, you're good.
unmuted, yeah.
Sorry about that. I
So,
did not see it.
yeah. So just to sum it up, I think as you said, Mr. Chairman, or somebody said, in a vacuum, this is a really cool thing, and it's a different sort of thing. So I believe that, but you know, the commission said we need to look at this. It didn't mean the commission approved it and said we love this, go do it. They said go study it from a planning standpoint. That's our job, so we've done that. And as I mentioned, you know, I think there are a number of flaws in here. You know, even if this thing wasn't labeled winter garden or whatever, it concerns me because I love the bistro concept. I think it's been a silver bullet for this community, and what makes them work is it's 65 people, period. You know, 65 on the outside, period. And you know, I get concerned when I see opportunities for where those rules can be bent. This is a hard area to police, if you will. It's a destination to get around the back. And Mr. Chairman, you asked the question about, you know, potentially putting seating out in front. You know, their storefront really isn't very wide. It's a door, and you're obligated to have seating and tables that are visible. So I don't even know. In my mind, they don't comply with aspects of this zoning ordinance. And even if we said, if we supported this project, in my mind, they still need to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals and get variances for these things that, in my opinion, don't comply.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone in the public that cares to comment on the motion? On the motion itself, you can use the raise your hand function if you do. Looking around, I see none. Well, let us bring it back. Could we please call the roll on the special land use permit recommendation to deny?
Jana, can we make some comments, Jana?
We have a motion on the floor for voting, and I've called for a vote. So could we
I
please
think it
call the
was,
roll?
Daniel Scher,
Yes.
Bert Kosek,
Yes.
Janelle Whipple-Boyce,
Yeah.
Naseem Ramin,
Yes.
Robin Boyle,
Yes.
Scott Klein,
Yes.
Stuart Jeffries.
Yes.
Thank you. We
Mr.
still do
Mr.
have.
Mr. Chairman, if you would
Mr. Chair?
entertain, I would make the same motion with respect to recommending denial of the site plan for 720 North Old Woodward.
We have a motion by Mr. Scher. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Kozak, any conversation at the board? Would anyone else from the public care to comment on that, on the motion? We'll bring it back. Can we please call the roll?
Daniel Scher,
Yes.
Bert Kosek,
Yes.
Janelle Whipple-Boyce,
Yeah.
Naseem Ramin,
Yes.
Robin Boyle,
Yes.
Scott Klein,
Yes.
Stuart Jeffries.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, this has to move forward in a different direction. thank you for your time. And again, the city commission will be the final arbiter of this, and we'll hold a hearing on this in the near future.
Thank you very much. Thank you to everybody.
Thank you, Roman. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Let us move along to the study session. This will be a little bit more informal for those of you, the public, still sticking around. We were talking about some various potential ordinance changes from our action list, which was provided by, in part, by this board and then approved and discussed with the city commission. So let's see, solar panel regulations, an old friend of the program. Nick, is this you again?
Solar panels, I'm up. Yes. So this one is also somewhat of an easy review on my end, just to update you all. We talked about this quite a bit of times. Most recently, though, on July 15th of last year, we revised the language again. There were some conversations in general after reading the minutes and reading through my notes, really concentrated on just the what I'm calling ancillary equipment and what types of ancillary equipment come with solar panels, where they usually go, what they do, just as a general concern about adding a bunch of what I'll call mechanical equipment to sides and rears of homes and how that may affect neighbors. So it was my job to reach out to, because I'm not a solar professional, although I'm close now, I bet. I do a little bit of internet research, reach out to some solar professionals, get their opinion on what types of ancillary equipment is common, what it's for, and where it's located. So you can see the results of those inquiries in that table I provided. There are several types of equipment, from inverters to sub panels, batteries, disconnect switches, junction boxes. A lot of it goes inside, like a sub panel, common thing if you want to run a specific item off of solar, like a fridge, you'd have to install a sub panel inside so that you can create that circuit. Storage batteries, another thing that I'll say specifically is typically inside. I was told that they're rated for indoor outdoor, but when people spend 15 grand on a battery, they like to have it inside. Battery disconnects are always located near the battery, sometimes outside, sometimes inside. Disconnect switches for the actual solar are always outside. They're actually required to be within 5 feet of the utility meter that's on everybody's house. There can also be things like junction boxes, which is kind of a meter type thing that you can kind of gauge the performance. And that's really it. The professionals that I talked to seem to think that when it comes to the inverters, which is really the only distinction, when looking at up the large single unit inverters, which is first on the table here, the name fits the bill. They are actually quite large, it looks like. But what I was told is that the industry is kind of moving towards micro inverters, which are actually located on the panels themselves. So not on the sides of houses, very small, very nominal in terms of visual impact. So you probably saw as well that both in speaking with the professionals and reviewing some of the recent plans we've gotten for solar panels, most, if not all, of this equipment is located at or near your existing utility meter. So we had some questions. Could we write in the ordinance requiring it on the rear only of the house? Well, it seems to me that you can't write something like that in the ordinance because of some of the rules, again, with disconnect switches and such. Some utility meters are on the sides of homes. So I think the language that I had was sufficient in that I required ancillary equipment to be located on sides and rears of homes only. So that was unchanged. Basically, the language was unchanged. This is mostly just a report back from what I learned in speaking with the professionals. And I had a professional express interest in coming tonight, but alas, they were unable to come. I know Stuart was interested, and I know you kind of spoiled you with that awesome glazing guy last time. But I think I gleaned enough information to suffice for tonight in terms of what our goal is, which was to, in general, make solar easier in Birmingham and less restrictive. So open to questions. I can pull up any documents per usual.
All right, Mr. Jeffrey.
So two things. One is thanks for trying to get an expert, because I think that's, Mr. Klein said earlier, advantages and disadvantages of this format we're in. One is if we could get somebody to, having them come out of their house and come to a meeting is one thing, but if they could just turn on their Zoomer, that's another. And I don't know if I mentioned this before, but if you're in a company and you're trying to run it efficiently and you're coming into things that you don't know about, you go out and you spend a couple dollars and you hire somebody who's impartial and will give you good information, and it's worth it, because then you don't do things over. Remember, we did glazing twice and stuff, and so if we can spend a few $100s to get somebody in, I think that's a good investment, but that's a little separate here. The one thing I saw when I read through this, the only reason I even thought of it is I've seen this in Traverse City, is we cover rooftop and backyard or arrays. We don't cover wall mounted. And I've seen in Traverse City where they'll take a whole side of a house because of the way the house is situated and cover it with solar panels.
I hadn't even, well, obviously, probably I haven't even considered it just because we don't see it here. And admittedly, I felt maybe though, after you said it, that it probably wouldn't be so popular. But you can see I included, I kept the ground mounted solar electric system section in there to kind of reserve it just in case we want to revisit it in the future.
Yeah.
We could simply add another section like that or amend that section.
Well, personally, I think it really doesn't look very good.
Yeah.
I think I would want to preclude them from happening.
It's precluded.
Not to mention also, if you did it and the houses are so close, I don't know what the reflection off of these things is, but I can imagine if the guy next door has vinyl siding, he might have an issue.
Yeah. So just to be clear, you're thinking about asking us to add a specific language discluding those.
Correct.
Or did you feel as though the language as presented does it already?
No, I just think it better safe than sorry. It's a couple keystrokes, just preclude it.
Yeah. Hey, Nick, could you just add a 3 like you had mentioned? In that section that just says wall mounted or facade mounted, or use some language that says that are not permitted, just like you did with the ground mounted. But who knows? 2 years from now, we might have some fancy windows that do it. Who knows?
Well,
just say we're not going to allow it, but give us the room to grow, right?
Yeah, sure. That's easy enough.
Any other comments, questions?
I see Robin has his hand up.
Oh, Robin, I'm sorry. Mr. Boyle.
Yeah, it's very much in line with what Scott just said that very minute. Two things. One, in your conversations with other cities and with the industry, what might we be looking at that's very fresh? I mean, solar panels. I mean, let's be honest, guys. We're back in the late 20th century. There, they've come down 90% in price, I believe. So my first question is, are there other areas that we should be thinking about that might be part of this policy change, or at least zoning amendment? That's number one. And number two was something a little bit more specific, and that is, I've read and I'm aware that you can incorporate solar panels into a re-roofing project. These don't look like panels. They actually look like shingles. And I wondered if that's something we need to deal with or not. And maybe the engineers on the board can comment on that. I don't know whether they're
Tesla
into that.
makes them.
Yeah, so that is the only thing that I discovered that's new. Like coming down the pike should be commercially available sooner, and soon in planning terms might be 10 years, but you know, we think autonomous cars are coming soon too, and you know what that means. But I did include in B1A solar photovoltaic shingles as permitted.
Oh, I missed that. What page is that?
On
the PDF.
Let me look. Do a little scrolling.
87.
Hey, Scott,
Page 87.
while he's
87?
looking, I found a picture. Here's the house in Traverse City with this.
Yes, I don't think that would go over well in public park.
No. So it's on page 86, Robin.
86.
B1A, last sentence of that. Or solar photovoltaic shingles.
Oh, got that. Yes, found it. B1A. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and that's really the only place I mentioned it. I think if you're suggesting maybe we should do a little bit more in terms of expanding upon what we want to allow with those, but yeah, they're pretty standard. They just, like you said, look just like shingles. So
That's great. No, I think it's important that we had these mentioned so it didn't come up and cause a problem the next time round. But my first question, you know, I mean, I don't want to be Jetson-like or, dreaming, but is there anything that people are talking about that could impact the exterior and aesthetic of residential properties?
I didn't run into anything besides batteries. So,
you know, Robin, it is further out there, but I do know there are a few test installations going on in Europe right now of, for lack of a better term, photovoltaic pavement sections that are precast sections used for bike paths and the like that convert the sunlight into energy and are used to light the path. You know, could that perhaps be used in panels for driveways? You know, I know we're kind of reaching here.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know enough about it to tell you that it's anything more than testing right now in Copenhagen and the like.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to raise it, and I think
interesting.
And I think we've had the answer I was looking for. Thank you.
Mr. Scher.
Nick, did you give consideration to whether the ancillary equipment on the front or side yard ought to be screened in some fashion?
yes, because you had mentioned it.
Yeah.
So, and my general answer to you would be no, because what I felt was that we were trying to make solar panels easier and less restrictive and less of a less hard to get. And if we started adding things like that, I felt as though we were kind of either going backwards or just exchanging one hard thing for another.
Could screening be an impediment in the sense that if it has some of it, if the ancillary equipment is supposed to be next to the meters, that, you know, might make either the utility angry or difficult to read? Maybe all these meters are now smart meters and meter readers don't exist anymore. I don't know.
Yeah, and it depends, because the professionals I talked to specifically said that things like those disconnect switches, consumers needs access to those, and they need to be within 5 feet so that consumers can find it and find it fast. So sure, if it's more of a hardscape screen, like a metal mesh or some sort of wood with a gate, could that, you know, that couple of seconds mean more fire or less fire? But no, I wasn't specifically told that screening is an impediment necessarily, but you know, in thinking it over, you could think that it could be.
Do we require it anywhere currently for gas meters, electric meters,
AC units,
conditioner?
generators? No, not really.
So in none of these districts where this could be used, even on the B1, B2, B2B, we don't require any screening of those sort of accoutrements yet as of now, correct?
Well, I would say in commercial districts, yes, we'd consider that, mechanical, either ground or building mounted mechanical. So
Do you feel
we
this,
saw that
this
on-
is clear enough in its current configuration that the other sections handle all of that?
I feel comfortable with it just because of the results from other buildings. So yeah, but fair
I
question.
think if I can, I think it would be wise to include a cross-reference of some sort to say that to the extent screening, this doesn't exempt you from screening otherwise required by the zoning ordinance.
Any other comments?
Yeah.
Well, I would go to the public, but I see no public.
I thought I'd have a record showing for this.
You would think solar panels would light up.
Terrible. That's a bad one.
Really charge them up, yeah.
I will, just for the sake of a complete record, offer the public now any opportunity to comment. And we will then bring it back to the board just for reference. So Nick, what would you recommend we do at this point? Are you thinking that you're close enough that you would like to start moving this forward? Do you want one more crack at the apple to tighten it up and maybe get an expert here to provide a quick review of what we've written and go from there? Where's your head at?
I would like to drop kick this forward. I think I'm done. I think the suggestions for making a reference to the screening that's for commercial properties and the wall mounted is super simple. So the language would not change much from now until say a public hearing. So yeah, I'm ready to rock and roll.
And the next meeting before somebody asks that you could set it for, if you wish, is May 12th.
My birthday.
Happy birthday.
All
Do we
right.
get a night off or do you have to do double duty?
Say we load that meeting up.
We're going to bring back all the oldies and the goodies, We're talking glazing some more.
Oh yeah. Nothing says happy birthday like trash enclosures.
Exactly.
Yeah, trash enclosures. I was going to say dumpster doors, doors. Bring it back.
Perfect. Well, board, any discussion, any concern about that moving forward that way?
No.
Seems reasonable, right?
Go ahead.
All right. Does anyone want to make a motion for a public hearing on May 12th?
I think that's appropriate for me. I'd make the motion that this matter be brought to a public hearing to be dated at May 12th, 2021.
Motion, Mr. Boyle. Do we have a second?
Sure.
Second.
Second by Mr. Any conversation at the board level? Hearing none. Anybody from the public? Hearing none, we will bring it back. Could we please call the roll?
Robin Boyle,
Yes.
Stuart Jeffries,
Yes.
Bert Kosek,
Yes.
Daniel Scher,
Yes.
Janelle with a voice. Was she muted?
Yes, she is muted for some reason. There we go.
Yes.
Ms. Zimmerman?
Yes.
Scott Klein?
Yes. Wonderful, unanimous. Moving along, we're just striking that action list one by one. Let us move to our next item, which is window glazing. Nick, where are we at on this one?
So arguably even more simple.
Right.
The only comments that were raised at the last time we talked about this in July 2020 was pretty much, and that was the day we talked to the glass professional, by the way, which really helped. So really all that was left that came out of that was the concept of maybe requiring low iron glass, and also eliminating that bronze requirement from the Windows standards that we thought was a little outdated. So that's all that I did. So low iron glass is excuse me, I'll just read the definition. The new definition for clear glazing states that glass and other transparent elements of building facades with low iron contact, or excuse me, content. The light? No, it's only 9. No tint, a minimum visible light transmittance of 66% and a reflectivity of 15% or less. So that is the new definition that we wanted to push. And really, from what I understand, adding low glass and no tint was simply for discussion. This board was not necessarily sure if they wanted to just yet require low iron glass, but that's it. So before you ask, I'm also ready to go to a public hearing on this. I think we were even closer on this than solar panels last time. I think the board expressed a lot of desire to kind of just push this part forward and then kind of talk about the other questions in regards to shelves, you know, retail products and windows next time. So we'll just boot that till next year on Robin's birthday.
Nick, does anybody have any comments or input on, Mr. Schiff?
Yeah, I want to suggest that we drop the low iron. I actually had the occasion to buy some myself for a project that an addition we're doing for an interior application. It added a little over 15% to the cost. I think that for the windows that we're talking about citywide, the visual difference walking by on the street between low iron and whatever normal is isn't material. I think the percentage of visible light transmission is more important, and I don't think we ought to burden owners and developers of projects with an extra cost that's somewhere 15% or north on the glass.
Any other opinions? I know Mr. Kozak, Ms. Boyes, you deal with glass quite a bit. Any comments or concerns? So it seems like the board is in agreement to eliminate the low iron content requirement.
No problem.
Yeah. Any other discussion? Just out of courtesy, I'll go to the public. Again, I don't believe there is any public here, so we will bring it back to the board. All right. Board, anyone interested in doubling up on May 12th with 2 public hearings?
Sure.
Mr. Scherer.
So I'll move that we set a public hearing on Article 9, Section 9.02, definition of clear glazing as presented without the reference to low iron content for May 12.
Motion by Mr. Scherer. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Boyd. Any conversation about the motion? One last time to the public. Let's bring it back and let's call the roll.
Daniel Scher,
Sure.
Janelle Wolfe-Boyce,
Yes.
Nassim Merman.
Yep.
Robin Boyle,
Yes.
Scott Klein,
Yes.
Stuart Jeffries,
Yes.
Bert Kosek.
Yes.
Excellent. Good work. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
Let's move into communications, administrative approvals. Nick?
Well, I have a communication first. before
Let Jana go. Yeah.
and approvals,
Sure thing.
Communications, just reminder that next Monday, the special city commission meeting where they've asked the planning board to attend to talk about the recommendations that you previously made as a board for changes to be made to the first draft to finalize to the second one, not finalized, to move forward to the second draft.
Thank you, Jana. But that's the workshop before the meeting, right? That's not the meeting itself, is it?
No, it's a separate meeting.
So there's
But
not a city,
Well,
there's not a
that's what
city
I-
commission that night.
There is not a city commission that night, and it is proposed to start at 7.
Oh, so
So
and
this
that's the
is
only
the-
thing on the agenda?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Do we have a Zoom address for that?
I imagine it'll be the city commission link, but no, I don't know specifically. at
You
this-
are correct. It is the city commission standard link.
Thank you, Eric.
Okay.
Is there any materials for that?
Yes, there will be. The agenda will go out on Friday. Well, actually, the city commission tries to put them out on Thursday now, so you might get it Thursday. Essentially just if I could, you remember that DPZ had provided that letter or memo listing all of the comments. The city commission, the last time they talked about it at the last meeting, they wanted more information. So we did get an updated memo from both DPZ and McKenna that gives all kinds of information, any kind of information they could possibly want on the comments and how many were for and how many were against and what the issues were and how people participated and you know, participation by the numbers kind of thing. So there's 2 new letters for you to read or memos that will come out in the agenda packet.
Is there anything that this board needs to prepare, Jana? I mean,
No,
is the commission simply going to ask questions? I mean, what do you anticipate the format to be?
I don't know specifically what the commission will want to do, but they did say they wanted more information, and all of you as board members have lived this, right? We've gone through these public hearings now for quite some time. So you all know what was discussed, and you'll see your last year or 2 of your life spread out in all of these memos. So I think you can provide some clarity if you want, but the memos are pretty clear. So perhaps the commission might have questions or commentary or direction on, for instance, seams. You know, do we want to eliminate seams entirely, or do we want to just shrink them down and only have them in a few areas? I mean, I can see sort of some discussion in that regard, but I think it will be generally, I've put in a motion language in the memo for them to provide direction to the DPZ team to incorporate the recommendations that the planning board made into the second draft. That's the goal.
Hey,
Mr.
Jana,
Boyle, well, Mr. Boyle had his hand up. I don't know if that was on
No,
purpose
it's another item, Stuart.
Okay.
Scott.
Sorry about that, Stuart. Go ahead.
I'm sure there's going to be hundreds of pages in this. Is there a 2, 3, 4 items that in their discussions kind of came up and that if, in your estimation might have more concern for them or anything?
Nope. The last time it was considered at the city commission, they said, okay, it was a long meeting. There were a lot of things on the agenda. They got to this one and said, oh, we're going to need more information and more time. And they set a special meeting for it. So
I mean, I got a call from one of them on ADUs, and I didn't know. I mean, I just don't have the fortitude to sit through those 5-hour meetings on Zoom, but so I was wondering if they had a big discussion on that maybe we could glean a few points on. Okay.
No.
Okay. Mr. Boyle, did you have a comment related to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to state that this is good news. I listened into the workshop on unimproved streets, which was on Monday evening, and it was quite clearly one of the best meetings that I've heard the commission deal with for a long time. The staff were incredibly well prepared. The material was digestible. They were each kept to 15 minutes, depending upon what they were discussing, whether it was the engineering, the design, the finance or policy. And then they had to end with 2 questions, which they then put to the commission, and the commission responded. And in many cases, the commission said, yes, yes, no, no, yes, yes. It was really helpful, and I think a model of how we might use these workshops for other elements. And from just to summarize, I think there's an incredible head of steam to go ahead with the recommendations of the staff based upon what the committee, the unimproved street commission committee had said. So that was all pretty positive, in my opinion.
Great. Administrative approvals. Do we have any tonight?
Yeah, we do.
Oh no.
So predictable.
You thought you'd get out of it.
Until someone comes and physically takes me off my pulpit, I'm going to keep it. Okay, so I
Seems
think
like
only
a
maybe
challenge,
one
Mr.
person knows
Blake.
my address here. So if,
What
so my
do we
first
got?
question, the outdoor dining standards require that all tables and chairs provided in outdoor dining areas shall be constructed of metal, wood, or material of comparable quality. So the owner of EM Bistro, Mr. Bongiovanni, had submitted an administrative approval application addressing the interior chair thing that we discussed at a previous meeting, but also he wants to change the chairs. They're proposed and approved as wood, kind of normal bistro chairs, and now they want to switch to these. They are, the reason I bring this here is because the material is polypropylene, which is a plastic, which is not, on the surface is not a material of comparable quality, but the chair is, I know we don't, cost is not our purview. They're $340 chairs. They're not, although very European, I'll say, they're not your typical plastic chairs that we may have been averse to in the past, especially when writing that specific section of the ordinance. So in no way in heck was I going to administratively approve that without coming to you first.
The Mick Jagger chair, I think.
Yeah, very modern, very European.
I like that.
I think the price of hamburgers just went up about $10 each.
Yeah. One nice thing about these is they have to bring these in because one, people would want to steal them, and two, there's no place to loop a cable chain through at night.
I can't remember do you happen to have their site plan that shows where these are specifically?
Unfortunately not. But I know that if you recall, they had originally proposed a platform which was not approved by the city commission. So if you're familiar with the building, the tables and chairs would be all on that kind of little inset area.
Yeah. Yeah.
So not a very significant amount, less than 30, I would say.
Oh yeah. Yeah. More like 20.
Yeah.
Nick,
I think our ordinance speaks to the materials that it does for longevity, right? Quality materials, whatever. So I don't think this is gonna rot or disintegrate, or it's probably a quality material. It goes back to some of the other aspects of our ordinance that, like thou must have wood doors on your trash screen, dumpster. So we don't always keep up with the latest in technology. So
hey Nick, are these chairs made out of recycled materials? Are they recyclable? I mean, are we just allowing someone to plop a lot of plastic in front of our restaurant? I'm trying to get rid of plastic in my house, and now we're going to spend $300 a chair on these things.
So I don't know offhand. I can't say that I know.
Is polypropylene the one with the milk bottles that they make into?
Depends on the resin number, whether it's 4, 2, 5. It's all one.
I personally think they look like art. I'm fine with them.
Me too. I don't mind.
If you know the manufacturer specifically, Nick, it probably will say if they're made of recycled materials. There's a lot of companies make this chair, but I think it's pretty cool.
I was given a spec sheet, so I can check.
Well, what's the overall sentiment? I mean, I hate them, but I'm the one person that said anything negative about them. So I see 2 thumbs up. I see anyone else? We want to let Nick improve it.
Oh.
Dan likes them.
Yeah. Yep.
Bert likes them. You're all wrong, but that's fine. I wrote it down.
Go ahead.
All right. I guess I'll let them have them, I suppose. And they're going to be white, by the way, so not that red.
That changes
everything. My answer's changed.
My second question is, I want to get really far ahead of this in that this COVID-19 outdoor dining expansion that we've allowed, several people who have not had a platform before are putting out platforms. I'm not talking enclosures right now, just platforms. Some have liquor licenses, some are establishments like Beyond Juice.
Sure.
When it comes time for this temporary outdoor dining expansion to expire, whether it be June 30th, which is the current expiration date, or if they extend it to next year, what have you. I'm wondering what your opinion is, because I'm being asked left and right. What would the approval process look like? Would you prefer to see all of these outdoor dining changes, all of these platforms in the form of a design review? Or would you rather us handle it internally through administrative approvals? It's kind of a tough question. It's really early, so, but I'm being asked.
I mean, I got a
almost
couple of
every week.
questions back to you, and I hate to do that, but one, if an existing establishment in pre-COVID days wanted a deck, walk us through what the process is. And two, aren't we supposed to be looking at outdoor dining as part of our action list? Potentially expanding the season, allowing it year round, all that may entail to enclosures, decks, what have you. Anyway,
From what I understood, I thought we were just talking about enclosures. In terms of the study session coming up, that's what I understood. If I'm mistaken, we can talk about that later. But
we never do anything simple, Nick.
No.
Can't laughed at that one.
Well, that's what I was going to say. The direction was to look at enclosures, but of course, as soon as that comes up and having that's essentially outdoor dining year round in an enclosed area. So it's going to come up.
Yeah.
And to your point about what was the process before, if there was a new dining deck coming, it would have come to the planning board and the advisory parking committee for some feedback on whether or not the street can handle it. The only thing we have approved administratively, it would be if somebody put a couple of tables and chairs out in an, outside of a bakery or something, on an existing sidewalk.
And indoor seating, we have approved administratively
Indoor.
a couple of times too recently. The ordinance isn't clear. The outdoor dining standards don't say if you want a platform, you must come to the planning board for a design review like it does in some instances. But I think I speak for all of us, whenever it comes to outdoor dining, especially at bistros or liquor license establishments, it's just kind of customary to at least come to ask first. Whether you decide it's a design review or admin is one thing, but we tread lightly when it comes to that. But
Mr. Boyle.
Yeah.
I don't want to take this too far, but again, walking through town today, some of these platforms and the extensions and the seating and the deck coverings don't do justice to the city that we have, to be honest. I won't mention a couple of them, but they're both very large in different parts of the city, and they have a huge impact on the particular street. And I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but I think I'll raise it anyway. If you read what's happening in other places, this is a policy issue rather than a design issue. This is a question about what is the street going to look like over the next 5-10 years. And if you have a downtown like Ann Arbor or Birmingham or Northville or Ferndale or Royal Oak, then perhaps we want to consider this in a somewhat more generic and comprehensive manner. What are we going to do long-term about the use of the street for outdoor dining? Rather than asking whether we should be approving one wooden or semi-wooden or plastic deck and what the covering should be. I think it needs a little bit more thought. Sorry, but that's what I feel.
I agree with you. No, I agree with you, Robert.
So kind of an opportunity to maybe see if we can wrap it in with the enclosure conversation. I don't know if we probably need to get approval because it was a specific directive from the city commission, Jana, but maybe we'll talk it out internally. We still have a good amount of time, I'd say. So let's not dwell on it tonight. Jana and I will discuss, see what we think and go from there.
I don't want to be the devil's advocate, but I would say we don't have a lot of time. Just look how long glazing took us. All these other things, solar panels. I mean, we don't do these things in 2 months or 3 months. So, I mean, we're going to have to really do a hardcore press, I think, to get them an answer if June ends up being the date that they need the answer.
Well, and I agree with you. To Robin's point, as a policy issue, if the city commission is considering expanding the time limit for outdoor dining, which I guess I had thought was part of what they asked us to look at. Maybe I'm confused. But if that's the case, we need to hop on this quickly because next winter will be here before we know it. Like you said, it takes one meeting a month. That, public hearing, city commission, we're already into fall. So I agree with both of you that we need to look at it. I would suggest more comprehensive, but as Mr. Boyle said, we probably need a little bit more clarity in what we're being asked to do by the commission. If you could, please.
That's a good way to do it.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. Thank you. That was it.
All right. Draft agenda for next time, April 28th. Gianna?
The next meeting, it will be the new proposed building for RH is coming back. As you know, we had a preliminary site plan and a community impact study discussion. It was postponed over to April 28th. So those two items will come back. And then also we'll have a public hearing on the rezoning request for the same property to go from D3 to D4 in the downtown overlay. And also a zoning amendment request related to that same project, but of course to the ordinance in general, to amend the economic development map to include additional properties, to include these three sites or portion thereof. So that'll be the full agenda for April 28th.
Janet, could you tell us the outcome of the planning of the city commission's discussion about the lot separation and then lot consolidation for the site?
There was no discussion. They set a public hearing. So the public hearing for the lot splits / rearrangements / combination will be going May 10th.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jana. So I am recused on that matter. But board, if I do my math, that strikes me as 4 items on that agenda. I know that normally is not a problem for our rules. During the pandemic, I don't know if this was I don't think this was a formal change. Was it, Jana, that we just said
It was
3
not,
is
no.
more of a temporary thing? I just will throw it out to the rest of the board. If there's any discomfort, anyone wishes to make a motion, make it official to hear all 4, I'm open to that. But I think we're probably fine. Would you not say, Jana?
I would, yes, because that was just a consensus or an agreement amongst the board members that, hey, Zoom meetings can be hard. Let's try to limit them. And we have heard 4 things a few times now.
Okay.
But the rules of procedure limit you to no more than 5. So you're well under the 5 that's outlined in the rules.
Okay. Any other business before the board? Seeing none, hearing none. Thank you very much. Meeting adjourned. Good work.
Have a
Thank
good
you all,
night.
everyone.
Have a good night.